like maps? How about a detailed hand-drawn map that reflects your favorite people, places, and things? Visit Cartograph Me on Instagram or Facebook and see the possibilities and the works of artist Philip Bailey. Remember, Cartograph Me, putting you on the map. What's our favorite horror movie? I hope you have an unlimited phone plan, buddy, because we are gonna be here a while. Scream starts now.
Hello?
Hello?
Who is this?
You tell me your name, I'll tell you mine.
I don't think so.
What's that noise?
Popcorn.
You making popcorn?
Well, I'm getting ready to watch a video.
Really? What?
Oh, just some scary movie.
You like scary movies?
Uh-huh.
You never told me your name.
Why do you want to know my name?
I want to know who I'm looking at.
Someone is playing a deadly game.
It all began with a scream over 911.
Someone who's seen one too many scary movies. Now he's taken his love of fear
Hello?
Hello, Sydney.
one step too far.
Do you like scary movies?
What's the point? They're all the same. Some stupid killer stalking some big-breasted girl who can't act, who's always running up the stairs when she should be going out the front door. It's insulting.
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a scary movie. Number one, you can never have sex. Never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, say, I'll be right back. Because you won't be back. Get another beer, you want one? Yeah, sure. I'll be right back!
He didn't make the rules.
Police are always on track if they watch prom night at same time.
He just kills by them. Don't answer the phone. Don't open the door. Don't try to hide.
Everybody's a suspect!
You're not scared, are you?
Scream.
We're going to expand our weekly video segment to take you into the back shelves of your local video store. Back where it says horror videos and where kids are devouring some awful films that we call the video nasties.
Are you freebasing? Inquiring minds want to know.
I have to break free from this culture of mechanical reproductions and the thick incrustations dying on the surface.
Fuck the prime time, bitch!
Long with the new fletch.
The pain, I can assure you, will be exquisite. As for our deaths, come with me and be immortal. We have such sights to show you.
We've got to return some videotapes.
Hello, horror hounds, and welcome to the It Slays podcast. I'm your humble host, Rowan.
Hi, it's Xylia.
And this is a dried out 10-year-old highlighter Mike.
And we are not just back, but we are celebrating. It is our 2-year anniversary.
Holiday celebrate.
And we don't just celebrate one episode. This is the first of 2 episodes. Cause, god damn it, it's our birthday month.
Oh my god, we are that girl. It's my birthday year!
My birthday year.
We are every boy and girl that you love watching on My Super Sweet 16 because you were like, boy, this is a train wreck.
My favorite Super Sweet 16 line, you don't think today is about me, but it is.
I fail to see how anybody at any one of those parties would possibly think it was about anybody else.
I'm trying to remember, like, the people. I don't even remember. I just remember CeeLo's daughter was in an episode. That's the only one I really remember. Wasn't, like, Diddy's son, like, the one no one really knows about, like, on there, too?
I don't know.
I have no idea.
I have no clue.
That just goes to show our, like, tastes in reality television. At that time, y'all were watching My Super Sweet 16. Meanwhile, I was, like, addicted to Honey Boo Boo. So, there we go. You guys were like, I want candy that's not trash. And I was like, I just want total and utter fucking trash. Like...
Yeah, like I said, I I can't believe it's been 2 years already. Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, 2 years. That's been a long 2 years.
Jeez, that didn't sound enthusiastic.
No, I'm just saying.
Oh, but this is coming from the man who every time we text about this episode would say, it's our 1 year anniversary. I'm like, no, it's 2.
Yeah, it's absolutely
I know
terrible.
the last year has just been a blink and, like, non-existent for most people, but...
Yeah, now that I really think about it, it's kind of crazy, because I think when we recorded our 1 year anniversary episode, we were in lockdown?
No, it was right before.
Right before.
Yes, it was right before, because the first one I think we recorded in lockdown was with Colton.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So it was right before, because it was the guest.
Yeah. I'm really now going back and reminiscing in my own mind about the years. Well, I'm just thinking about, like, we recorded in Toronto, and I'm just really, like, thinking that through.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride, and I've been enjoying it. I'd say lots of episodes that when we'll see how cute all this is when, you know, we're like 60 and 70 and we're still recording.
Or, like, don't you think it's funny that people will be able to go online in, like, 100 years? Maybe not 100, that might be a bit pushing it a bit.
I hope
in several years and listen to this.
I hope in 100 years that there's like a real revival of the podcast and young teens everywhere wear Shade Brigade t-shirts.
We're hit. Posthumous hit.
I would fucking give my life for that right now.
I definitely think we should get a little introspective in a second, but I thought a fun thing to do to start off the episode would be, it's been a long time since we've kind of checked in and just talked about media we've been consuming. Let's start with you, Mike. How about some notable things you've been listening to, watching?
I will tell you, this week I've been reading / listening to the audiobook of Octavia Butler's Dawn. Octavia Butler is everything, for anybody that hasn't read her. Literally one of the greatest, I'm going to say one of the greatest writers ever, but definitely one of the greatest sci-fi writers. I think she was the first black woman to, like, get the Hugo and Nebula Awards, which is, like, for sci-fi
I was
and
gonna
fantasy.
say, I think so.
And she had a MacArthur Genius Grant, too, if I remember correctly, which maybe I'm not, but I'm pretty sure. But all of the books I've read of hers have been, like staggeringly brilliant. Like, and I don't normally read a lot of, like, sci-fi, but, like, her sci-fi just gets inside of you, and oh my god, it just, like, changes you. It's fucking amazing. She's just brilliant. Anyway, so I've been really enjoying that. I'm almost finished Dawn now. I've been listening to, and this is only the last 2 days, the re-release of Dua Lipa's Future Nostalgia album, which came out last year right after we went on lockdown here in Newfoundland. The original version, and then last night she re-released a new version of it with extra tracks. So I'm like, ooh, our 2 1 year apart lockdowns, I got the same Dua Lipa album getting me through it. So
nice.
I didn't know about this new release.
We love it. We love our, like, you know, synth pop dance queen.
I do love that album too.
Oh my god, and spectacular. And the new one has that, like, Miley song that she did from Miley's album, which is really, really good. And I've been watching, actually, just tonight when I got home from work while I was eating supper. I finished watching the last episode of the newest season of Wentworth that's on Netflix, which has been an obsession of mine for several years. The Australian women's prison drama. It's brilliant. Everybody should watch it. Yeah. So that's it. That's pretty much been my media binge the last couple of weeks.
I still haven't seen that one. I remember you telling us about that way back.
It's one of those, like, soap operas that is just so well done, and the characters on it are so charming, and I don't know, I just think it's, like, slightly different from everything of its ilk. Like, I kind of thought when I first started watching it that it was going to be, like, a less interesting Orange is the New Black, and then I realized that Orange is the New Black is a less interesting Wentworth, was what happened. Which is not to slag off on Orange, but you know, that's it.
It's, I find Orange is the New Black is like a roller coaster in terms of good seasons and bad seasons. In the middle, it really went quite mediocre, I found. And then I really enjoyed the last season, and I bawled my eyes out on one of the seasons.
I cried several times the last couple seasons.
Yeah.
I was there, it's true. Oh, how about you, Xylia?
So I've been spending a lot of the time reading. I'm on my 9th book of the year so far. Right now I'm actually listening to the audiobook of Know Her Name, Chanel Miller.
Oh, Chanel Miller. Nice.
Yeah.
I still haven't read it. How is it?
It's really good, and she reads the audiobook.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which I think is very powerful. So for anybody who doesn't know, is not
it's
on
like
a
know my
basis.
name and hear my voice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Chanel Miller is the person who was sexually assaulted by Brock Turner. And I'm really enjoying it. It's really interesting. And it's kind of interesting to watch her become an advocate for the system, or against the system, I guess you would say.
Yeah, the broken system.
Yeah. I also just finished Brain on Fire. I didn't love it. I thought obviously I've read that one, yeah. Have you read it?
No, I haven't. It's been on my list, but I kind of feel like it might disappoint me.
Yeah, so basically it's about a journalist for the New York Post who had this mystery disease all of a sudden. I'm not gonna ruin it for you, but the mystery of the disease part was really interesting. But last year I read Hello, I Want to Die, Please Fix Me, which is a really spectacular mix of memoir and investigative journalism, which is what I think this was trying to be, but that was just done so superiorly. Anyways, it was done really spectacularly, and so I can't help but compare them. I read In the Dream House.
Oh, Carmen Maria Machado. Love.
That's probably one of my favorite books ever.
She's brilliant.
Yeah. So those are the ones that I've read in the past. Oh, and one called Fair Play, about women's work, domestic work, and trying to make it more fair in the house. But yeah, that's what I've read this week. In terms of shows, Rowan and I have been binging Superstore, and I love it.
AKA the best show ever.
I'm Team Amy all the way. And in terms of music, there's 2 songs that I've been kind of playing over and over again. So Cherry Glazer has a new song called Big Bang that came out the other day, so I've been listening to that. And then a song by a band called Icky Blossoms. Haven't heard any of their other songs, but this one's called Cycle. I really like that. So yeah, that's pretty much what I've been up to. Rowan.
What about you, our humble, not so humble host?
How rude. How rude.
Shade Brigade, man.
Shade Brigade comes out early. Last week finished Acceptance by Jeff Vandermeer. So, I mean, I stan Jeff Vandermeer. He's one of my favorite writers. So I've now officially finished the whole Southern Reach trilogy, and it was epic, as, was expected. And then I just started, I'm kind of getting myself amped up for the, new Mike Flanagan Netflix show he's working on, The Midnight Club.
Oh, Christopher Pike.
So I have a new obsession of collecting Christopher Pike books and R.L. Stine, teen books.
Girl, my parents' basement has boxes of stuff waiting for you.
Yeah.
I had all of them. Christopher Pike was my favorite when I was growing up. I got all of them. I would hit the used bookstores all the time and get all the old, really cheesy, cool covers.
Yeah, that's basically what I've been doing, hitting up, used bookstores, Value Village. And yeah, I'm, hooked now.
I just want to say, though, that Midnight Club is Christopher Pike's most boring book, in my opinion.
I'm only, one chapter.
It has the least amounts of sex and violence. Hello, Monster, Chain Letter, any of those would have been really good, but go, it's all good. Pop off, go Christopher Pike. I heard Heather Langenkamp is cast in that, so
yes,
I'm all about that.
Super excited about that.
Yeah.
So I started that, in terms of, and then movies, I've just kind of been trying to catch up on things in the last year that I missed, so, I watched New Mutants recently. I actually really enjoyed it. I know no one else liked it really, but I liked it. I watched Dark Phoenix. I didn't like that. Yeah, I've just kind of been brushing up on that kind of stuff. Just random. I've been binging Parks and Rec because I never watched it. I guess I was late to the party, so I'm on
tardy to the party.
Yeah, and I started that couple months ago, I think. I'm on like season 5 or something now.
It's so funny because somebody texted me like 4 days ago saying, I just started watching Parks and Rec, and I'm like, season 1, episode 6 is like my favorite thing in the universe.
My next question, I want to know, as we reflect on the podcast, I want to know, so this last year, is there any films that you can think of that you would want to re-review, that maybe you gave too high praise, maybe too low a praise, maybe one that you lied to the other two on the podcast and said you were watching it, but you really weren't paying attention? I feel like Xylia thought that was directed at her, but
I
it
don't
wasn't.
think it was.
Oh, okay.
You were talking about Killer Clowns and Mike, weren't you?
I'm not gonna lean anyone to say anything, but I mean, if anyone on the podcast feels like they need to make a general apology about any bad rating they may have given cult classic cinema, I'm not gonna say no to that.
Well,
okay, I will say this about Killer Clowns, to get you off my fucking back. It would be that perhaps at the time I was too critical of it as an actual movie, which it isn't. It's very clearly not an actual movie. So I really should have just shut my trap and said, how enjoyable is it on a scale of like shitty moviness? And even then I would probably not give it a rating that you would enjoy, so we won't go there, okay?
I can give a review to each of the movies that I missed. I missed 3 this year.
You missed 3?
I did.
Oh, that's right. I forgot.
Excuse me, you only have 1 unexcused absence, so
okay.
you will be punished.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
We'll be taking off your paycheck.
The Witch that Colton was on. I'm gonna give that movie a nay. Because it is fucking boring and I can never stay awake during it. So hopefully...
Excuse me, I have one thing to say.
What?
Anya Taylor-Joy. Boom, done.
What?
I said Anya Taylor-Joy.
Oh
preach, girl, preach.
So hopefully The Lighthouse is better. But next, Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker? Nay. That was a fucking weird movie.
Attacked! How dare I was not expecting that. I was like,
that movie was fucked.
I'm not gonna lie, I thought it was
exactly. That's what's so good about it, bro.
I thought when we watched it she liked it, so I'm surprised at that.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, here's the thing, you did not give a full critique of it, so we don't care. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. And the next one, Strange Days. I'm gonna give that one an okay.
Do you have anything positive to contribute to the class, young lady?
What do you have to talk about, Mr. Wall, if it was a movie?
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
I know, Rowan, that this was a little bit before our anniversary, but do you have anything you have to say about Mandy and how you would rate it better?
I mean, we've already discussed, I think we discussed that last anniversary, that
okay.
I did regret that. I do have, not necessarily I'd say a regret this year, but maybe it still never clicked with me, is the stuff. Just because of how much everyone loves the stuff.
And I don't get it.
Yeah, and I just didn't necessarily get it. And I feel like maybe I'm missing out on it.
I don't like it either. I hated the stuff.
Yeah, well, I feel like none of us were big on it. I just feel like I'm missing something because I know people love that.
I think they like it just because it's not good.
Maybe. So my last question, before we get into it, I want to know what you think was the best sleeper movie we watched this year. What one you think kind of went under the radar?
Oh my god.
I mean, I'll say my pick first as you guys reflect.
Okay.
I think ours was our last episode, Laura Mars.
I'm actually, incredibly glad to hear this.
The more I think about it, and the more I spend every day listening to Prisoner,
Yep.
I'm just
Barbara, you sing it.
I still think about that, even weeks later, and I'm like, man, it's good enough that, I have it in my Amazon list of things to buy.
Yeah, it's one of those that, there's parts of it that you just keep thinking about, for weeks.
Yeah,
it's like a brain worm.
And I just feel like...
Not worms on the brain, but, it worms its way into your brain.
And I just feel that it was a movie that probably most people wouldn't have on their radar that should be. I'm surprised it's not more popular as like a cult.
Like a cult oddity? Yeah. It's really weird that it hasn't gotten that like really lavish like boutique treatment and reappraisal that a lot of movies which frankly are shittier and don't even have as much going for them as cult oddities are getting.
Yeah.
Like this one has a lot more like pedigree.
Yeah.
Like this is essentially a John Carpenter movie, like you look at the people involved in it, like it's all like Oscar winners and like like Helmut Newton, like everybody involved in it is like A+++, and it just sort of like disappeared, but it's like it has all the hallmarks of like a rediscovered classic, but like nobody has kind of gone out of their way to like really give it that like reappraisal that it deserves. I think maybe we can start a renaissance, Laura Mars Renaissance now.
That's right.
Laura Mars Renaissance 2021 challenge.
Did you enjoy our last podcast episode on Laura Mars? Well, welcome to Laura Mars
Part 2.
Xylia, how about you?
Now, this is an episode we did 2 episodes prior to our 1-year anniversary, but I would say after midnight. I think I like enjoyed it a lot more than I appreciated it at the time.
I thought you gave it a good rating.
I don't remember what I gave it, but I mean, you said a sleeper.
Yeah,
she feels like she didn't appreciate it, so that's enough for me.
You said a sleeper. I mean, I don't know. I've never heard of it otherwise.
I'll agree with that. I'll let that one slide.
And then, of course, I can't go without mentioning House. Now, that is like a cult classic, I feel, but everybody should watch it.
How about you, Mike?
I would say...
like me.
I'm never gonna like you. No, I'm kidding. I'm never gonna like me, and if I do, know that I have actual brain worms, or I'm a pod person, and please feel free to like set me on fire. No, honestly, something that I keep thinking back on, and I hadn't thought about for a long time before we recorded our episode on it, but since we recorded the episode, I keep thinking about all the time, and I've made reference to several times in the last month, is Repo the Genetic Opera.
Ah, interesting.
Like, I think about that and talk about it like weirdly more than a grown person should in late 2020, early 2021.
I feel disrespected. I talk about it all the time.
I said grown person.
Ouch.
Rowan.
Ouch.
No, I literally just mentioned it to somebody a couple days ago when we were, I was having insomnia and I woke up at like 4 o'clock in the morning one night and I couldn't get back to sleep. So again, I went on Tubi because they have this like weird shitty selection of stuff, and Simple Life was on there, so I put it on. And the next day I went into work and was like, guys, all I could think about is Paris Hilton and how Repo the Genetic Opera was really good. And I can't stop thinking about it and I want to like be in it. And
Did you watch Paris Hilton's documentary?
I still haven't. That one it keeps slipping off my radar for some reason, but like I desperately want to. But I also feel like there's some real problems with it.
She basically is like, yeah, The Simple Life was bullshit, because she used to like, do you know the basic premise
of the documentary?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, basically.
So she used to have to do like hard labor at these schools. So she was like, yeah, I was like completely fake that I didn't know how to like sweep or whatever.
I mean, we never, even at the time, we would never have watched that assuming that there was anything about it that was even vaguely resembling reality.
When I watch reality TV shows, I like to imagine that they're reality. Because if you think of them as real, then it just like takes the fun out, you know?
I know, and that's why I can't watch that much reality TV, because it's no fun for me, because I'm just looking at it going, this is so fucking fake.
Oh yeah, I just turned
like
my brain
Joe
off.
Millionaire? No, I'm sorry.
Who's Joe
Deep
Millionaire?
Deep cut from the early 2000s for other olds.
Other olds. I remember the name, but I don't have the...
Joe Millionaire is the reality dating show that surprisingly only ran for one season, where it was essentially like The Bachelor.
Mm-hmm.
It was after The Bachelor, and like that type of show became very popular.
But
and,
he's a millionaire.
It's like he's a millionaire, and it was all these girls, obviously vying to become his wife or like girlfriend or whatever. And then at the very end, after he picks the person, they're like, ta-da! He's actually like a day laborer.
Okay, I remember the name of the show. I never watched it.
It was
That's hilarious.
awful. It was awful. It was so bad. Like, I mean, I don't really remember it because, I was young at the time, and it was a very, very, very long time. It was a lifetime ago. But I remember, like, seeing most of it on TV and, like, just going, this is so bad for so many reasons that I can't even explain.
That's where the name Joe comes in, because only, like, a day laborer would be named Joe.
Yeah, well, he's like a construction worker or something, not a day laborer, but, it's the whole point was he was poor and he was not a millionaire, and it was the thrust behind it of like kind of exposing people's like mercenary natures was like, yes, take that idea but execute it differently, please. Like, so that it's not as exploitative of everybody involved.
Yeah, really.
So we did some quizzes, of course. Xylia, why don't you take it away what it was?
Okay, so these quizzes were obviously, what Scream character are you? Mike, what Scream character were you? And if you have screenshotted the description, please tell us.
Of course I screenshotted my result. What Scream character am I? I am, naturally, to nobody's surprise who's ever met me once or even listened to this, I am Tatum Riley. I'm a total badass. Yeah, right. But you're the best friend, and you're spelled wrong, anyone could ever have. You're very protective of your friends. You're also the type who likes to have a good time. In a horror film, you probably wouldn't be the survivor, but you'd put up one hell of a fight. And I was like, you know what? I wouldn't survive a horror movie. I may know everything about them, but I'm also a dumb bitch, so I know I do something stupid and get killed right at the very end. So I'm happy to be Tatum. I'm happy. She's one of my favorite characters in horror movies. I love Rose.
Nice. Rowan.
What about y'all?
Who did you get?
So mine was very insulting. So I got Stu Matcher. And my description was, you're a killer, but very sensitive and easily pressured into things.
Yeah, that's Rowan.
Intelligence isn't really your strong suit.
Wow, read the tea and the shade.
I know, right? Though that may be because you consider most things a joke. You're a huge horror fan and party animal, but just like the other killers, you don't get away with it.
I mean, to be fair, a lot of that is really accurate.
It is.
Thanks, guys.
It's surprisingly accurate.
Unintelligent.
Like, frighteningly so.
Unintelligent party animal.
No, we said some of it, not all of it. The party animal part, 100%.
I got Sydney Prescott. It says you're survivor, not you're a survivor. You're survivor, but also the main victim. No one has ever been able to kill you. You always escape. Unfortunately, those you love are put in danger because of you. But one thing's for sure, you're a fighter. So me and Mike are BFFs.
We are.
BFFs.
I would 100%, absolutely be your... I would get killed in a garage door for you any day.
Aw, thank you. That's very
The love.
sweet.
The Shade Brigade, we gotta have each other's backs, man.
So what do you say we get into the main event of the evening?
I suppose.
We tallied the votes. It was a battle to the death. You guys that follow our social media saw these movies fighting head to head. Some great movies. Lost that should have won. Aliens in particular. I'll never forgive anyone in the audience for that. But some did come triumphant. One would be, we have it screenshotted. It was picked by friend of the podcast.
Family of the podcast.
Family of the podcast. The Cecily Herber.
Queen.
1996, Wes Craven's Scream.
The year she was born. Perfect. Don't steal her identity.
Her social insurance number is...
Yeah.
She's probably going to be really upset we don't have, like, a whole 20-minute blurb ready about, like, her birth and, like, her life.
I was there. I can tell you
but
all
here's
about
the
it.
thing. She will be returning for an episode, and we will get her entire biography in that. We might not even talk about the movie. It's just going to be Cess talking about herself.
The horror movie we're going to talk about is Cecily's life.
It's Cecily's life!
What
what it's like being related to these two.
I'm almost surprised we haven't done it yet. I mean, there's lots of iconic ones we haven't done, but this is kind of one that, I'm not gonna lie, I thought the first year Mike would have picked this one.
Well, here's the thing. I was going to, but I don't know if I thought it was too obvious, which is not really fair because we've done a lot of other, iconic/obvious choices, just because you want to talk about them because you have a lot to say about them. And you want to rewatch them and, appreciate them and evaluate them. But I guess this one is, I'm a big fan of, saving the best for last. So this one was one that I kind of wanted to put off. Not because it's the best necessarily, or maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but just because it's a great movie that you want to sort of keep in your back pocket for a rainy day and trot it out. So for our anniversary, this is a very rainy day. Another year down the drain.
And I mean, I always like to sprinkle the facts in as we talk about it. Now, as I said Wes Craven's Scream, although I think many would kind of argue now, as it's aged very well in everyone's memory, I think, just as much Kevin Williamson's Scream as Wes Craven.
Absolutely. And I actually have thoughts on that. I have thoughts.
We will get into. What I did want to say, very interesting, is very kind of close to not being Wes Craven's Scream. There was many bids on this movie, and so Miramax, I know, won the bid, and then they ended New Line, or I guess the Miramax at the time, got Wes to direct it. But the other directors his company was bidding in a bidding war for this was Oliver Stone. I did not actually know that, but apparently Oliver Stone was trying to buy the script. And I don't know how I feel about an Oliver Stone Scream.
I feel like it could have definitely been an event at that point in his career.
It would definitely necessitate at least 2 VHSs in when you purchased it.
Yes, and a double CD soundtrack.
It would definitely be very, very epic.
Extra is the word you're looking for,
yes.
Maybe? Extra is definitely how I would describe Oliver Stone's Scream.
But yeah, interesting if you read up on it that Craven had actually turned down this film originally. I know he was kind of trying to get out of horror at the time. And anyone that knows anything about Wes Craven knows, he very intellectual guy. Mm-hmm. And I know he had voiced concerns with the horror community and horror movies. He was worried that horror movies about the misogyny and all the kind of social issues with horror, and he wanted to separate himself from it. But I thought another interesting fact we should put at the beginning here, I think what's interesting is some of the directors that they approached to direct it before Wes Craven said yes. Because there's some real heavy hitters that this movie, I think, would be totally different, but very interesting. Robert Rodriguez.
Ooh, I'm actually salivating at that, because that could have been a real good movie.
Well, and I think it's kind of interesting, because I think if we really almost think about it, we kind of got his teen horror entry, because right after this, we got The Faculty.
Yeah.
I forgot he did that one.
Yeah, he was approached for that.
I mean, it's hello, it practically was Scream Redux in a way, in terms of the talent involved.
Well, yeah, exactly. Danny Boyle was approached to direct it.
Oh, wow.
So, I feel most people know Danny Boyle, but if you don't, his real fame, I think, would be 28 Days Later. Trainspotting.
At the time.
I feel like this would be a very different movie in Danny Boyle's direction. The comedy, I think, would be a lot different than Craven.
I was gonna say, it probably would have been a lot starker. I feel like the Danny Boyle Scream would be very stark.
The two last names that were attached to it, George A. Romero was approached to direct, and I mean, I just don't think I can picture that.
I don't see that at all, honestly.
I mean, he definitely has the humor, but by no means disrespect. I mean, George A. Romero is legend, but I think his comedy is way more. I mean, we get it in Creepshow, or the comedy in this is not a Creepshow type comedy level.
I feel like the self-referentiality of it and the kind of postmodernism of it is way more overt and sledgehammer hit you over the head than I feel like George Romero's commentary is, I don't want to say subtler because there's nothing subtle about it, but it is subtler. Like, it's just, the commentary is not as playful as Scream's commentary was. So I just feel like their modes of, like, interrogating, like, the genre and, like, social issues are just totally different.
Yeah.
I can't see it. I mean, maybe it would have worked. Who knows?
And then last but not least, which I think might be the most intriguing to me, is Sam Raimi was approached to direct it, which I think I try to envision like a hybrid of Scream and Evil Dead 2. Like, I'm like, what would this... I mean, we probably definitely would have got a Bruce Campbell cameo, at least. Which, I mean, any movie improves with Bruce Campbell, I feel.
Oh, listen, I'm already picturing Bruce Campbell as Principal Himby or whatever his name is, and I'm like, okay, I can already see this working. I want to call him Principal Himbo, because the word himbo has been on my timeline on Twitter a lot for the last 6 months, so, like, Himbri, I think it is, yeah, so every time I looked at him, I'm like, it's the Fonz, aka Principal Himbo. But he's not a himbo. There's no way. God love you, Fonz. You're not a himbo.
So before we get into the bio and the actors, the last thing I wanted to mention was, which I know Xylia is going to appreciate, because we did some extra watching after we watched Scream. So Scream was not the original title of this movie. The original title that Kevin Williamson wrote was Scary Movie.
I didn't know that.
I know, I'm saying you'd appreciate this, because me and Xylia did watch Scary Movie.
We did.
After we watched Scream. So that was the working title. And funny enough, they renamed it Scream because Bob Weinstein was inspired by the Michael Jackson song Scream. And then that's where they got it from. Fun fact.
The Michael and Janet Jackson song.
That's right. Oh, excuse me.
Let's not continue to like ignore Janet Jackson's contribution to pop culture, please. Thank you.
I greatly apologize. I am very sorry.
Thank you, Justin Timberlake. Topical. It's very current.
And you guys will notice I talk about what the director's done. I feel like Wes Craven doesn't need an introduction.
We don't need to go into that. It's self-evident.
Nightmare on Elm Street, we've reviewed. We stand it. We heard it. Hills Have Eyes. Last House on the Left.
And yet we are.
Swamp Thing, of course.
Yet we are going into it.
Just in case anyone needs that update. So let's get into the bio.
And here's the bio. Someone has taken their love of scary movies one step too far. A killer known as Ghostface begins killing off teenagers. And as the body count begins rising, one girl and her friends find themselves contemplating the rules of horror films as they find themselves living in a real-life one.
I think that's possibly one of the longest Letterboxd bios we've had so far.
I feel like they said themselves too much in a close space.
Too much themselves, Letterboxd. Well, let's get into the actors of this great film, and there is a lot to talk about. I guess I will start with the always spectacular, our leading lady, Neve Campbell. I promised I wouldn't... Canadian. I promised I wouldn't say Naomi Campbell, because that's what I continued to say before we started recording. I said, Rowan, don't embarrass yourself.
Again.
But, no stranger to, cult, iconic films. So the Scream films, obviously, the franchise, The Craft, Wild Things, and also, probably most famous in how she got this role is Party of Five. She was the star of. I've never seen that. That was like a little before me. I would have been too young to watch it.
Feel like
I was born.
Honestly, I never really saw it either.
Yeah. So Neve Campbell. Like starring
at
Sidney
the time,
Prescott.
That was probably what she was known for, and now nobody would even remember what that show was. Like, I don't remember that it exists. I don't think I've ever seen a full episode of it, like, in my life, so... It's funny the way that your filmography kind of, like, flips itself.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna step on anything for the next person, for Xylia, but I do have... some interesting kind of what-ifs with that Neve was not the first choice. Brittany Murphy was up for this.
That's interesting.
My heart.
R.I.P.
Very R.I.P. So Brittany Murphy, they approached Reese Witherspoon for
I
it.
can't really picture that.
And she turned it down. And also, what's her name? Tori Spelling. Which is why
I could see her as it.
Yeah, and that's why there's the line in it about Tori Spelling.
Yeah.
Because apparently she was the who they wanted, and I think it was just like a conflict. They couldn't get her. Xylia, why don't you tell us about your actor?
So mine is Drew Barrymore, who plays Casey. And I mean, Drew Barrymore has a life of, many, many films, but I'll just say some that I like here or have seen or whatever. But, well, obviously E.T., starting at the beginning of her life. And it's interesting because we were watching Bly Manor.
Yeah.
And we were like, what is this guy from? And he plays Elliot in E.T. I had no idea. She's in Donnie Darko. She's obviously in this movie. Batman Forever, Wedding Singer.
We have some weird Batman Forever connections going on in the episode.
Because Batman Forever is peak of cinema.
It's true. Charlie's Angels, I used to have the CD soundtrack of that when I was a kid. It says she's in Altered States, but I don't remember that.
I don't remember.
I don't remember her being.
She would have been young when that came out.
Well, I don't know. Never Been Kissed. I saw that.
I was going to say Never Been Kissed. One of my favorite things to say when I don't hear what somebody said to me is I repeat it back, but instead of repeating it back, I go parakeet, and I got that off of Never Been Kissed.
I've never seen that.
I saw that in the theater with my mom.
Oh my god, it's so good.
Cute.
It's a real cute movie. Yeah,
Firestarter.
Prepare to be slayed. Oh, yeah. Firestarter, I love it.
And then just a couple more Home Fries with Luke Wilson. I remember seeing that when I was probably 10. Between the ages of 8 and 10, I used to be obsessed with Drew Barrymore. And another one.
Luke Wilson is an underrated Wilson brother, by the way.
Most definitely. I used to have a crush on him for that movie. And then finally, I read this book when I was in grade 7, and I recently found my live journal from back then and had noted on my live journal that I had read Riding in Cars with Boys.
Oh, wow.
And she's
deep cut.
Yeah, and she's in that movie. So, yeah. She's in 69 movies, according to Letterboxd.
Some that I was surprised Xylia didn't mention, The Wedding Singer.
I did.
Oh, did you? Yeah. I didn't hear that.
Yeah, I mentioned
She didn't mention one that I rewatched recently, and it actually horrified me. Poison Ivy.
And I was gonna say, Drew's kind of dabbled in horror recently. You and me, Xylia and I watched. Wasn't she in Santa Clara Diet?
Clarita. Yeah, she's the main character.
Yeah, she's great in that. How about you, Mike?
Okay, so my actor, I did not choose lead because we all know some of the other people like Courtney Cox, Queen. I was just fuck, Rose McGowan, indie queen at the time. This was a real sort of mainstream breakthrough for her. We know her from this. The Doom Generation was a huge indie hit that she had before this, and I think was probably the thing that mostly got her the role. And then after this, she was in Charmed for many seasons, which was a really weird kind of tied in because it's kind of got horror elements, but also is really, really sugary sweet mainstream.
My mom's obsessed with Charmed.
Oh my god! But it's one of those things that people get into. People at the time were really into, but now in retrospect, it's gotten a real cult appreciation by people that never would have been into it at the time, or also people who were barely alive when it first came on. So I find that very interesting, and it's kind of got that timeless cult classic. We've also seen her in such genre hits as Grindhouse.
Oh yeah.
AKA two brilliant movies from Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez. She's in both of the movies in that double feature, but mainly in Planet Terror, which I'm gonna go out on a limb and say is probably Robert Rodriguez's best movie ever. And I think that even though it's a parody of sci-fi horror movies, it's probably, like Scream, a parody and an homage that is probably better than the actual things that it is parodying or homaging.
Very true.
And also, she's been in a million things, but one of the last things I want to mention that she was in that is a very personal, to the three of us, podcast hosts, it's a very personally important movie. It is the 90s thriller comedy classic Jawbreaker.
Of course.
Yes.
That we regularly used to get together and watch and make a ritual out of with our dear friend of the podcast, Angie.
Do you remember when she did those little like Chinese takeout things full
Oh,
of candy
she
and
did! Like full of Jawbreakers?
Yeah, and like wrote
quotes on them from the movie. And then we posted it on Instagram, and the director of the movie liked it and started following Angie, and it was a really lovely night. That night was like, we made a ritual out of watching Jawbreaker together, and yeah, so Rose McGowan's in that, and it's a really good movie, and everybody should check it out. It's, if you're a horror or a comedy fan, it's one of those like underrated, kind of like under the radar 90s gems.
It's true.
And I was gonna say, kind of, you know, we don't want to go on about the cast forever, so quick shout outs: Jamie Kennedy, and possibly the only good role he's ever been in.
Yeah, I know.
Cut the possibly dead ass.
Yeah.
It's period, yeah.
Matthew Lillard.
There was quite literally nothing likable about his character. I could not stand him.
And I will say that I think because of the popularity of him in this role, I feel like he took that and made it the blueprint for the rest of his career.
Oh, yeah. Typecasted 100%.
Yeah.
Although he's in Good Girls, and Good Girls is really good.
But he almost...
Yes, and he was also in the the resurgence of Twin Peaks and was excellent in that.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, he was in She's All That as well. Classic.
Classic. I was gonna say, and also like interesting that this just really broke him as a star. And I had seen that he didn't even like really audition for this. His girlfriend at the time was auditioning, and he was just in a hallway, and they were like, "Hey, come read these lines." And then he was just in this movie.
Interesting. Jamie Kennedy was in Romeo and Juliet. I have to point that out.
Okay. So 2 good roles in his entire life.
Yeah.
But guys, what about kicking it old school? I'm just
or
kidding.
the Jamie Kennedy Project. Listen,
oh
we're not going to go there.
God.
And poor old David Arquette, let's give him a shout out.
Yeah.
He's one of the hearts of this whole series.
Yeah, I see he has like a documentary on Netflix now. I don't really know. I don't know.
And I mean, and like, even though he's not, like, he's very charming in this series, and I think that you could not take him out of it. I can't imagine this series without him.
I have some hot takes.
Outside of that, I feel like his work is spotty. I mean, like, we love him in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the original, with Magga Swanson. But he is part of a dynasty. The Arquettes are like an acting dynasty, right? Like,
were those his real teeth?
In Scream or Buffy?
In Scream.
Why are those his real teeth? That's the weirdest question I think you've ever asked on this podcast.
Really? They looked fake.
Siri in Scream.
No, they just seem fake. They're really yellow and like, I don't know. I can't explain them.
I think you need to change the like tint settings on your television.
I'll have to go back and rewatch it.
We'll have to post on the Instagram, ask people, are these teeth yellow?
Anybody have the tea on David Arquette's teeth? Was he smoking heavily at the time?
I mean, they were very noticeably weird to me.
Well, I mean, very interesting kind of like bit part cameos in this. Linda Blair.
Oh my god, is the reporter. What does it feel like to be almost brutally murdered?
Wes Craven makes a cameo as the janitor.
Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah,
the Fonz, we've already mentioned.
Yeah, Henry Winkler. And I didn't know till I read about it, but apparently when he opens the closet in his office, they have the leather coat hanging up.
Oh, wow. That's so cool.
The Fonz leather coat. And obviously, I saved the best for last. We get playing the demented Billy, Skeet Ulrich, who I had my mic moment where I texted Mike and said that Skeet Ulrich
can ruin my life.
You know, he really he's like aged pretty well.
Yeah, hopefully a lot of our listeners like Xylia and I are massive Riverdale fans.
I wouldn't say I'm a massive Riverdale fan, but yes.
Broke my heart. Divorce.
Mike, can you see this picture?
Yes, I can. Okay, yes, so he smiles or grimaces with his teeth out a lot. Yes.
Yeah, that's just a weird look for me. I don't know, something about
okay, but
about
so
weird.
Since we're okay, so this is a note that I have.
Maybe it's the mustache.
It is definitely the mustache because he's not I don't think he's used to having one. So he acts with his mouth a lot. Sometimes you notice what people do while they're acting. So you noticed David Arquette grimacing with his teeth a lot in this movie, which admittedly he does. I also noticed Neve Campbell putting her hand up to her head a lot, and that's how she like conveys stress. So, listeners, I dare you to go back and watch how many times Neve Campbell puts her fingers or hands up to her head or in front of her head or around it, like she's voguing, but not quite. and that's how she conveys, like, stress. And it's fine. Like, this is just, like, tics that people have, or maybe they're introducing it into the character on purpose. I don't know.
Xylia doesn't like it.
That would be his tick for this movie, would be his teeth. His tick is his teeth. His teeth are his tick.
But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for actors. I was gonna say, when I did text Mike about Skeet Ulrich ruining my life, I had mentioned to Xylia and Mike that I was like, man, he really looks like Nightmare on Elm Street Johnny Depp.
Johnny Depp. Yeah.
Like they have
like,
this...
but a slimier Johnny. Like, Johnny Depp in that is feathered and innocent and, like, just, like, something floating on a cloud, you know, like, very much like, something out of, like, a, you know, Renaissance painting. He's very much a, like, pre-Raphaelite, like, you could see a Rossetti painting him as, like, a god, you know, with the feathered hair, and he's very much just cherubic and, like, untainted. And then Skeet Ulrich is like Johnny Depp, but, like, slimy, greasy, steamed version. Which is funny because then flash forward 10 years after that and you look at Johnny Depp in real life and then he became Skeet Ulrich's version of him. You know? Skeet Ulrich predicted what Johnny Depp would turn into in real life because then Johnny Depp turned into that, like, kind of greasy, mangy, etc., etc. So I feel like there was this weird, like,
switch almost.
Self-fulfilling prophecy, weird switch. It was like I don't know if it was some kind of, like, Picture of Dorian Gray thing with two different people, but there we have it. Like, something weird happened. They were, like, switching off. They passed the baton to each other or something for, like, I don't think for, like, 10 years we saw Johnny Depp in anything anyway, so I feel like Skeet Ulrich, like, took the baton and said, you go into hibernation, I'll take over for you for, like, 6 or 7 years. And then he's like, okay, I'm done, here you go, and Johnny Depp came back and was like, I'm in it to win it now.
Well, and fun fact, they, my suspicions were confirmed. Apparently that's exactly why they casted Skeet Ulrich, was because they said it reminded them of Johnny Depp in Nightmare on Elm Street. They thought since Wes Craven was the director that was a good connection.
It was a good callback, yeah.
Good throwback. So let's get into, is this our first experiences with this film? Let's start with you, Mike.
Oh my god, no. I've been watching this since I was, like, a wee one. I mean, a wee one, listen. I'm just a wee one compared to how ancient I am now. I've been watching it since the beginning. Like, I loved it as soon as it came out. Even though, you know, I didn't get all the references at the time because how could I? Like, you know, It was just jam-packed with, like, so many references and stuff that, you know, unless you were a seasoned, you know, sort of, like, had seen every movie ever made in the horror genre, you're not going to get it all. But, you know, I really enjoyed it, and I could understand that it was both making fun of and being a slasher movie at the same time, and I think that was my first experience with something like that, and understanding that the, like, parody of it, but also that it could be more than a parody, that it could parody and embody the thing at the same time. That was really, like, kind of game-changing for me. So because of that, it changed the way I, like, watched horror movies after that, and I watched it 100 million times since then because it was so foundational for me, and it's become like a comfort movie. I love everything about it. I've seen it 8 million times. So that's my history.
How about you, Xylia?
So I saw Scream when it first came out many years ago, and I think I only saw it once. And when I was in middle school is when Scary Movie came out. I'm quite certain I was, like, a grade 6 or 7. Honestly, when I started watching Scream, I was like, wow, I actually don't remember anything about this movie because everything I know about Scream is actually colored by Scary Movie.
I love how you're, like, looking at it through the parody lens before you even see it.
Well, I had seen the original first, but myself and my friends would just always watch Scary Movie. It was really popular when it came out, at least for, like, middle school kids, I guess. Yeah, so that's all I remembered of it. It was a different movie.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously not the first time I've seen this. I've seen this a handful of times. Probably not as much as Mike. It's been at least 10 years since I've seen this. This isn't a movie I necessarily revisit often. I feel it not for like any major reason. I don't hate it. It's not, when there's films I watch over and over again, this just isn't one of them, I guess. So it was definitely interesting to watch because it has been so long that a lot of kind of the middle of this movie I forgot and like I didn't overly remember other than like the real iconic scenes.
I feel like this movie has a lot of quotables.
And like Xylia said, like I watched this and all I really think about is the like Scary Movie, like what's up
I
thing.
know, when we were watching Scary Movie, before it came on, I was like, oh my god, favorite scene. And it's like, what's up? And then he's just like sitting there and he's like, oh, what are you doing? He's like, nothing, chilling, killing. Like, I just love that part. I don't even, now that I rewatched Scary Movie, I'm like, wow, this is so problematic. But like that part really, withstands the test of time.
We know what we're gonna start off with first. Our favorite kill or scene. Xylia, why don't you set us off?
Okay, so my favorite scene is actually a favorite quote, but it's something we used to have on our intro when we first started. And now that I'm like on the spot and have to say it, I'm probably gonna fuck it up. But it's the one and it's like,
he's sick for fuck's you've seen one too many movies.
Nah, Sid, don't you blame the movies. Movies don't create psychos. Movies make psychos more creative.
Yes, the endings, the climax.
Yeah. And then my favorite kill is of Drew Barrymore because he's like dragging her and she has like the old school phone just like trailing behind her. I like that part.
I mean, I was gonna say,
and you know that her mom can hear like every sound and scrape.
That's creepy. But I more so just like that he's dragging. Like it's like getting drug along. I don't know.
How about you, Mike?
Well, I mean, I thought about this while I was rewatching it for the recording, and it's tough. I mean, I want to say that whole opening scene.
Iconic.
Because it truly, like, the first time I watched it, I mean, at that point I had seen a fair few scary movies. I started watching horror movies when I was, like, 8 years old. So, honestly, by the time I saw Scream, I had seen enough. Right, like, it's, think what you will, maybe some people would judge that, but, like, my parents didn't care. I was well behaved. Like, if I wanted to watch some horror movies, so be it. I was, got good grades, whatever. But when I watched that opening sequence, it absolutely, like, it shook me.
Yeah.
Like, I will never forget watching this movie for the first time, and that scene, like, that moment when he says to her, I wanna, like, see what your insides look like, I was just like, oh my god. Oh, like, you're like, oh, this is serious. Like, this is fucking real, right? Like,
yeah.
And it's like, oh my god, it's Drew Barrymore, but like, Drew girl, you in danger. Like, the shit is real. So, like, honestly, that because it had such an impact on my life, like, I want to say that scene, but I feel like it's also kind of a cop-out because it's so iconic. So, I'm gonna say, no, I don't. I mean, listen, I feel the same way, obviously, but I'm gonna cop out now and say literally any scene with Courtney Cox. Because I feel like in the subsequent movies, she became a main character, but in this, she was sort of secondary. But I feel like they just interspersed her throughout the movie, and she was kind of like a bit of an antagonist, and I just love that. I love her banter. I love, her wardrobe. I love her gross, chunky 90s weird highlights. And then, of course, when she kind of becomes a bit more, like, prominent in the narrative at the end in that last act at the house, like, I'm sorry, I've argued it numerous times. Like, I think by the end of it, Courtney Cox is, like, and for the rest of the series, I think Courtney Cox, especially in the rest of them, becomes, like, the main character. I think Gale Weathers, if Courtney Cox had not played her, would be, like, an awful character, but, like, because Courtney Cox is so charming, I feel like she's, like, the hero of the series. I'm throwing that out there.
Yeah, well, I was just saying, interesting enough, Courtney Cox, like, actually pursued this role because her words were she wanted to play a bitch to kind of, everyone thought of her from Friends, and she's like, I want to play the total opposite, and like, so people think of me for different roles.
Right, but like, because this movie has that satirical comedic edge, she still gets to flash those excellent comedy chops that she has.
Yeah.
Like, her zingers in this movie, I will tell you right now, there are lines from this that me and my, like, one of my best friends from, like, grade 7 onwards, like, we were both obsessed with this movie and watched it a million times and watched it together when we were growing up. And, like, there are zingers from Courtney Cox in this series, especially this first movie, that, like, we still say to each other. Like, because her delivery is everything. Like, you don't think of her as a horror person, but, like, guess what? She delivers the drama, she delivers the fucking tea, she delivers the fucking comedy. Like, it's just everything about her. Like, she's just perfect for this movie.
I also wanted to say the beginning, but I'll pick something different. I do want to say on the beginning, I think, to me, not even the kill being iconic in the beginning, but the great setup that it really starts off almost with those kind of comedic chops. The phone conversation at the beginning is like light and playful.
Yeah, it's very charming, right? Like,
Craven does
constant craving.
Craven does in Williamson, it's just like such a good job where that phone call like immediately turns into like horrifying, and like they did such a good job balancing throughout the movie that black comedy with like actual horror and slasher, you know, things that everyone wants. I have a favorite kill and favorite scene. My favorite kill is our girl Rose Tatum in the garage. That to me is like always iconic. When I think of this movie, that's the first kill I think of.
Yeah, that was a good one.
And like, just like, I've never seen that in a movie, so it's just like, wow. And then I think about like Scary Movie and stuff. Like, I remember the comedy bit in Scary Movie about it, and I just really like that kill. Although it's kind of silly because I'm like, did she really think she was gonna fit in that door? But and then my favorite scene, like possibly in almost any horror movie, is Jamie Kennedy listing off the rules of being in a horror movie, which is like iconic now. Like, everyone kind of knows that. Everyone knew
it's like
that
parodied,
stuff.
right? Like,
yeah, that's probably my favorite kill and favorite scene, because we always talk about it in any movie like this. Soundtrack way better than I remembered.
Yes, and of course, all of my notes are, oh my god, Nick Cave. Like, first of all, we need to talk about that. The fact that Red Right Hand by Nick Cave is used numerous times for this movie, and then repeats as a motif through the rest of the series, and they even have other people doing versions of Red Right Hand in later movies.
Oh, yeah.
It's so bizarre. It's so perfect. Honestly, the moments when it cuts to, like, those, like, establishing shots, and you hear those, like, the bell dings of that song, it really, like, sets a tone for the whole movie.
Yeah.
I just put that on our thing.
Oh, did you?
On our playlist.
And, like, Nick Cave is very gothic and creepy anyway, right? So, like, it's very, very fitting and appropriate.
Like I said, like, better than I thought. Like, I'm looking at it now, like Moby on the soundtrack.
I was gonna say, and I will say, like, Moby, problematic as of late. Well, I mean, really, as of a long time, but things that have come up as of late. But the whole time I've ever watched this movie, to me, one of the, I listened to that Moby song, First Cool Hive, that they play at the end. It's so perfect. It's this weird, lush, atmospheric, like, hopeful. It's very perfect for them to be playing, like, at the end, as it's like, oh, we just, like, overcame this ordeal, you know, and it's everything. And Republica, Drop Dead Gorgeous, which is playing at the party / right when Rose McGowan dies.
Yeah.
Such a good song. Such a good underrated song. I hope it's on Spotify. I'm gonna try to track it down later.
But it sounds exactly like their other song that was on
Ready to Go.
Yeah, Vegas Vacation.
Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. I bought that CD, their album. I'm assuming it's their only album at a used store a million years ago, and the only two songs I remember from it are those two. I feel like it was all the same kind of like propulsive rock. Good, it was good for what it was, but like I feel like there's a reason why they never really had any
other hits.
Sustainability.
Yeah.
I was gonna say probably not my favorite cover of School's Out by The Last Hardman. I thought that was kind of lame. I was not a fan of that, but I did surprisingly enjoy the Don't Fear the Reaper cover, like the acoustic.
Yeah, that acoustic version was really good.
By Gus Black is the artist, and then I really liked the Bird Brain Youth of America song.
Yes, and it's very subtle, but when Sid goes to Rose McGowan's house and gets the phone call while Billy's in jail, in the background there's a song playing called Artificial World, and the vocals are by Julie Cruz, who everybody will know as the vocalist from Twin Peaks, who does the theme song to Twin Peaks and appears throughout the whole series as the like lounge singer. And so normally she does this like ambient Angelo Badalamenti like guitar, David Lynch, like ambient kind of like hypnotic music, but like she teamed up with this like really like driving electronic propulsive beat with her vocals, and it was really cool. I really enjoyed it. I actually posted that song on Twitter like 3 months ago, just saying like let's remember how good this song was, and it needs to be on all the streaming services because it isn't. I had to post a YouTube link, damn it.
Now I was gonna say my big thing when watching this, and maybe just because it's fresh in my mind, when I was on another podcast for Halloween, shout out to every horror movie on Netflix, and we did all the Nightmare on Elm Street films. I thought it was interesting to watch this as kind of the shiny finished product to Wes Craven's New Nightmare, where we try this kind of meta horror where we're aware of horror movies.
Yeah, like a movie about movies.
A movie about movies. And if you listen there, it's been out for a while now, you'll know that I am not a huge fan of that one, of A New Nightmare. I'm a big fan of this. Like, I'm glad he kind of worked it out, and it just really worked in this kind of format. I think especially with like the teens, and it had that like, Kevin Williamson feel to it.
Yeah, New Nightmare was maybe too adult, whereas this really tapped into, because like a lot of like slasher and horror movies are like the audience is teens, so it was kind of good to get that more like youthful spin on it, I think.
Yeah, and before we get off, we've said so much about the intro scene. I did want to say, too, like, how impressive it is, when this film was, like, advertised, this was advertised pretty much as, like, a Drew Barrymore film. That's how they sold this film. And
I feel like they were going for that like Psycho vibe, right?
Yeah, well, and I was just saying, like, I can't think of anything other than Psycho where we kill off the most famous person in the film, within the first 10 minutes of the movie. Yeah. And it's like such a good turn. It's like such a good twist. You're like, oh shit. I definitely don't remember the impact in 1996 when I would have seen this, but I can imagine for most people it's just like, holy shit, because when you go into this, like, she's pretty much the only movie star in this.
Yeah, everybody else in it would have been like either a relative unknown or like some person from a TV show, yeah.
And then you're just like, oh shit, like now she's gone. And I just like, that takes a lot of guts to do in your film.
And they kind of cloned that with every movie for like 5 years after that, where they'd have a shocker stinger opening where you'd have a famous person get killed.
Yeah.
So then it became like, if you looked at a movie and saw there was a famous person, and it's like, oh, and they're in the opening scene, it's like, well, they're gonna die.
Yeah.
But this was the first one to do that, so I mean, we gotta give her props for that, because it would have been so shocking. Like, after that, not so much, because it's kind of becomes formulaic, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, with anyone, I'm sure everyone listening to this probably has listened to other things about Scream, and like this literally like reinvigorated a dying genre. Like when we're talking about pre-1996, horror is pretty much just a direct-to-video sequel in a beaten franchise. Like, they're not making good horror movies. They're not selling in the theater.
I mean, there's a reason why there's that scene in the video store. Like, it's just all going to, like, shelves in dinky stores all across America, right?
Yeah, and it's crazy to think
something for you to watch when you're about to go into lockdown.
Yeah, and it's just...
Oh,
it's
look,
like,
we gotta be in by 9 tonight. Let's get a couple of schlocky horror movies from the local video store.
Exactly, and it's crazy to think how influential this movie is. Like, especially on the rewatch, you know, like, anything you watch past 1996, like... there's usually some sort of remnant of inspiration from this film. Like, it's
the blueprint is there. Right?
Yeah,
like
and
it's
especially
absolutely there.
Especially like teen slashers, you know, especially like, you know, 5 to 6 years directly after this, like we're getting teen slasher after teen slasher. You know, everyone wants to replicate Scream and what it did culturally. And also, you know,
Scream was the twilight of its time.
Twilight of its time. Is that the headline?
And you can quote me on that.
That's like the headline for the episode.
Tagline of this episode. Scream was the twilight of its time. I'm so embarrassed by that.
But yeah, just so influential, and also, you know, gave us an iconic, you know, staple horror villain. Everyone knows Ghostface. And even if you didn't know Ghostface, you know him because, you know, Xylia, how many Dollaramas have you been in on Halloween that has a rip-off mask, a Scream?
Well, I mean, ever since I was a kid and it came out, like, people would wear that outfit. It's an easy outfit.
Super easy outfit.
It's a mask and a piece of fabric.
Yeah, which could have been
any kind of rubber knife. That's all you need.
And they always would have those knives with, like, the blood inside. Do you know what I mean?
Oh my god.
Oh, you can push the little button. Yeah.
A costume that was almost a disaster. I know I had read that originally it was supposed to be white instead of black. And because they thought it'd be more ghost-like. But then when they tried it on, realized that he looked like a member of the KKK. So they decided not to do that. Now, unfortunately, I will say it's hard when you're dealing with an iconic movie like this. You don't want to be like too critical of it. You know, you don't want to make people angry. But I will say, especially nowadays, it was very noticeable of how white this movie was.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think we really had any black characters.
No, listen, and
I can't think of any.
I think that they specifically addressed that in the second movie by having more like characters of color.
Yeah, and I do think they ended up fixing it with the further installments. But yeah, just kind of, I mean, this is 96, so I don't think this is necessarily at the forefront of, you know, the talk of cinema at the time. In mainstream, people just weren't really evaluating it in the mainstream culture like that. But it was just very noticeable watching it now, how white it is.
Yeah, it's, I mean, and you know, like it's like with anything from the time, like you might not have noticed it when you were younger, but like obviously shit like that is embarrassing now.
When we were younger, that was like what was normal. So it's like,
and you
really
don't until you're sort of like at the point where you can look at it critically, you don't go like, oh, I don't see X, Y, and Z on there, but like you should. But obviously if you're a youngster, you're not like kind of training your eye to like pay attention to what you're not seeing, like the absence of stuff. You know, you only see what you're seeing, you're not seeing the absence of what's there. And you know, there's a huge absence of any kind of color, obviously, and that's very highly problematic right now.
Except for white.
That's right.
Exactly, right? And it's just like, and you know, you kind of want to like, it's, and like I said, it is embarrassing. Like you look at it and go, oof, like not a single person in that.
Yeah, I guess. It is what it is. It's of its time. I feel another important thing to talk about is Neve Campbell bringing it up a huge notch for Scream Queens. Is she even a Scream Queen? She didn't really scream that much, but she did kick a lot of ass.
I think she's more of a Scream Queen because she didn't scream. I think that's the whole point. I think the whole point was that she didn't scream. I think the irony is the, like, absence of screams in this movie. I feel like her touching her face thing that I was saying earlier was like her version of screaming, and it was like, that was almost like a zen, like, I'm sucking the scream out, I'm not gonna give it. But again, it's like with Craven, you know, it's like the feeding of the energy from like the end of Nightmare on Elm Street 1. Like, she's not going to give them the energy of, like, screaming. She's not going to feed them. And I kind of love that. I feel like the lack of screaming... I mean, not that there was no screams in this movie, but, like, the lack of screams in Scream is kind of an interesting, auditory choice, you know what I mean? I feel like that's one of the reasons... Yeah, I feel like that's one of the reasons why everybody loves Sidney Prescott so much is because she doesn't scream.
Yeah, she...
When you look at someone like a Jamie Lee, and they have Jamie Lee on Halloween on the TV there, and that's for a specific reason. And she screams, but that was 1978 or whatever that was. You know, this is 1996. The girl doesn't need to scream necessarily. Like, she's already primed for this shit. She knows the rules, right?
For some reason, I always thought that it was called Scream because the mask looks like the painting Scream.
It does. It looks like the expression is painting the Scream.
Yeah.
And I think that is why they named it Scream. But I feel like it also does double duty because there's like...
It's a horror movie.
Yeah, well, I mean, it does quadruple. Let's face it. The name Scream does like quintuple duty even. Like, it's...
Like I said, just Sydney really bringing it up a notch, I feel. Kicking ass. And, you know, destroying Billy and Stu. I thought it was also, like, I really like what they did with Billy and Stu in this. Where I like that we get a motive at the end from one of them, and then no motive from the other, which I think was like a very deliberate thing. I know I briefly read somewhere that originally they weren't gonna have any motive, and of course studios like hated that. They're like, oh, well, people are gonna get angry. So I like...
Well, they dropped hints, you know, throughout the movie by saying, like, it's the millennium, motives are incidental. Like, I'm sure that was just it's foreshadowing the original, you know.
And it just adds more to Lillard's asshole persona when it's like, oh, I did it because of peer pressure, but not really, I was just bored.
My theory is, I mean, listen, like, I know we're always, like, that's, like, as a society, we're always trying to, like, psychologize things and, you know, pick it apart and look for a motive and look for, like, chains of causation and, like, where did this come from and why did this happen? And I know that, like, they sort of hinted at, you know, like, oh, peer pressure and, oh, just because of, you know, watching movies and because of society. One thing that never gets touched on, but that I think of every time I watch the first couple of movies in this is, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna throw out there that Billy and Stu, I'm not saying it's reciprocated, but I feel like Stu went a lot, like, I feel like Billy had a motive and Stu went along for the ride because he was in love with Billy. I feel like there's a dripping, how dare you? I feel like there's a dripping homoerotic subtext between the two of them, especially since they're always hanging all over each other and they're stabbing each other, which if you're just looking at it from the, like, purely, like, pop culture, like, daytime talk show in the 80s stance, like, they're, like, literally stabbing their penises into each other. Like, if a knife is a phallic symbol, then they're just, like, fucking each other. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just feel like there's a lot, I feel like there's a lot to unpack in their relationship, that continues even into, like, the motives in the second movie, but...
I like where this is going.
Yeah, I thought that about Matthew Lillard. He's always, like, hanging off the back of him and, like, looking over his shoulder.
Yeah, like, it's very physical, which, you know, not saying that because somebody has a physical relationship that's, you know, a sexual thing, but I feel like that's just an element of, like, it's a matrix of things for me, and that is one element of it. There's a lot of hanging on, there's a lot of, like, sweaty touching, and I just feel like they had been plotting things together and, like, killing people for a year. Like, that's some commitment. At that point in your life, you're not going to have a relationship that lasts a year, let alone a murderous relationship. I feel like there's something below the surface there.
Yeah, I like this theory. This theory is 100%
And, you know,
correct.
they murdered or tried to murder both of their girlfriends.
True.
They're eliminating the obstacles to them being together. First Tatum, which they, you know, succeeded with, and then they attempted with Sydney.
True.
So I want to know, I mean, we've talked about lots of great things about Scream, because there's lots of great things. Is there anything you guys didn't like about the film?
I will say this. So I have watched it a million times, and I will admit that it has been years now since I've watched it. Just because, you know, as the years go on, there's more and more things that you've seen and haven't seen, and you kind of pile it on your list of, I need to watch this, and then I'm gonna rewatch that. And when I rewatched it for this recording, I will say that one thing that I always loved about it, and that was very groundbreaking at the time, also kind of started to irritate me. And it was the self-referential postmodern aspect of it that was it was literally its calling card. Like, it was so ahead of its time.
Yeah.
The whole, like, movie lingo and video store knowledge, and here's what happens in movies, and we're gonna talk in all references. I know that at the time it came out, that was very much like, you know, like a very cutting edge way of having people talk. And while the lingo and the dialogue was not realistic, it was stylized, which I appreciated. But I feel like because it was so heavily imitated, that it became dated really quick. So when I was watching this, and they were, you know, all just speaking in like movie lingo and kind of like literally just full sentences that were just film references, I was like, it's kind of tired now in 2021. Like, I'm not saying I dislike the movie because of it or anything. Like, I understand that it was 1996, but I'm also saying that you would have to radically alter this movie to release it today and have it not feel like tired. It just feels tired. That one aspect of it does feel a little bit tired right now, because those tires did a lot of treading. In the years since.
That's kind of why I like this movie, because it's so like referential to horror movies, like meta horror, but it's a serious horror movie, if that makes sense. It's not like,
oh, it does, yeah, that makes total sense.
It's not like a parody, you know, it's not like Scary Movie, and I didn't remember that about this movie. I don't know, I like that part, I think.
Conflict on the podcast.
Yeah, Trouble in Paradise.
Trouble in Paradise.
I mean, it's not conflict. I love that about it. I'm just saying that, like, upon revisiting it, after having seen it 100 times as a youngster, and not watching it for many years, it just, that element of it to me, which I always loved, now does just strike me as a little bit dated. And it's not even, like, I don't even hate that about it. Like, it didn't upset me. It was just like, if I had to pick, and I was watching it and going, what would I not like about this today if it were released? And that would probably be the only thing that bothered me.
It's definitely, like, it definitely dates it for sure.
Yeah.
But I think that's what I like about it, because, I mean, I basically grew up in the 90s, and I don't know, it's just like a comfort thing.
It is, and I actually said that to somebody earlier tonight. I was like, this is a comfort movie to me. And it's because it's so dated.
Yeah.
In that one respect, right? It's not a dated movie, but like in that one respect, but it's, again, this is one of those things that's, it's like this cognitive dissonance for me. It dates it, but it's also, because it was the first of its kind, right? Like,
yeah,
it was the first one to do this, so you have to give it credit for that. And it's only dated because it did it so well, and everything after copied it,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Is the thing. So that is the, like, double-edged sword of being an innovator.
Yeah.
Like, you get to be the first person that did that, but in retrospect, after it becomes a tired motif, when people look at it, they're like, I know this already.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's, you know it because of that movie.
Yeah.
It's just that, like, it's tired because this movie did it so well.
It's kind of interesting that they made Scary Movie, and, like, really Scream is kind of like the basis for Scary Movie.
Yeah.
Because it's making fun of a movie that's kind of making fun of itself already.
Yeah, it was like meta.
Yeah. It's like, woo!
I've always thought, but that's why they went so over the top.
go?
But I will say right now that I think Scary Movie is having a bit of a renaissance via, like, Twitter memes and stuff, and, like, Regina King, her in those movies is just everything.
Yeah, she's hilarious in those movies.
I will say I can't tell you how many times I will repost the clips of, like, the skeleton chasing Anna Faris.
Oh my god.
And her going, mutilate that white bitch and not me. I'm like, that is my everything. Mutilate her ass and move on. I always think, like, I even think that, like, sometimes when in real life, I'm like, please mutilate that bitch and move on.
I was gonna say, I guess my hot take on this, and I don't know if you can do it without it, is as I did this watch, I don't really know if I care about Sydney's mom. Like, that whole plot line.
It's kind of loose anyway.
I feel like it's super loose, and I get, like, it kinda... the whole movie falls apart if it's not there, because they have the thing about, like, you know, Sydney saying what's his name, like, murdered her mom, but maybe that wasn't... Cotton Weary, who, great cameo appearance there. Yeah, I guess I just didn't care. It wasn't something I felt invested in, because I felt they weren't invested in that at all.
They didn't even really, like, build it, you know what I mean?
It's true, because to be fair, it's only, like, kind of a tool to, like, introduce her antagonism with Gale Weathers.
Yeah.
The only reason that it exists is, first of all, to give Billy a motive, and second of all, to introduce her conflict with Gale.
Yeah.
The rub is that Gale is that, like, fly in the ointment of the trial of, like, her mother's killer.
Yeah.
So the only time it ever, but I will say this. I'm glad that it's there, because even though it's really, like, undercooked in this movie, the fact that in the second movie, you know, by the end of it, it really becomes the driving force.
Yeah. And I do recognize, like, I know it has a bigger part to play in the franchise. I just, for this one.
No, but you're right. In this movie, it's a completely undercooked plot element, but I feel like they probably could have put an extra 15 or 10 minutes in and, like, kind of teased all that stuff out a bit more, but I feel like, you know, the movie probably would have dragged on. I don't know, I just feel like they were probably overstuffing it a little bit. I feel like they're trying to do a lot in a less than 2-hour movie.
My only other real issue with the film, I'm just not a fan of Dewey, or whatever his name is.
David Arquette?
David Arquette's character. I really didn't like... I have nothing personal against David Arquette, but I just thought he was, like, annoying. I didn't like his character.
Isn't that kind of the point of his character?
I'm like, how did this guy... And I totally... After I watched this and then we watched Scary Movie, like, I love the whole running joke in Scary Movie.
See, I find that, like, really offensive.
It is offensive, but I'm like, as I watch Scream, I'm like, how did this guy even make it on the police force? Like, this guy's literally an idiot.
I mean...
I think they just wanted him to be, like, the heart of the movie.
He's at, like, the party, and he's got, like, a beer in his hand.
I'm sure you could find some cops that are not that bright.
Wow, I'm not saying that. I don't know, just rubbed me the wrong way. I just wasn't a fan of him. I don't know if it's David Arquette or just that character, but I was just like,
I would say it's probably the character.
I'd be interested in seeing how somebody else interpreted it, but it's probably more like on the page.
Yeah, I feel that way too. Is there anything else we want to talk about with this? I feel like we don't want to beat it too much, because, you know, a lot has been said about Scream throughout history. So if that's everything, let's get to the last question. So, do we think... Is it scary or unsettling?
No.
Xylia straight away.
Straight up no.
Yeah, I'll quickly say no also. I think it's way too meta to be scary.
It is, I will agree and disagree. So I will agree that it is, the meta-ness of it completely kind of negates the scariness, even though it does pay homage to it. But I will qualify it with this. I will say that for 90% of the movie, the meta-ness does take away from it being too scary or unsettling.
Yeah.
But I also want to say that opening sequence is kind of terrifying. And I'm sure if you watched it, like, at the time, it was even more terrifying. Because the opening sequence is... Even though they are referencing movies and, like, talking about horror movies and stuff, it's not funny or satiric at all. The opening sequence is meant to be dead fucking serious, and I find that, like, that the opening sequence still, when I was rewatching it for this, even though I've seen it 100 times, I was like, this is still really fucking creepy. And it's really well done, and I feel like it's kind of shocking. So mostly, no, it isn't. But I feel like the opening sequence, which is the calling card of the movie, is still pretty unsettling.
A fun fact about that opening sequence, I was reading that they claim, now I don't know what the statistics behind this are, but they claim after the movie came out that caller ID was used 3 times more than normal because of this film. In that scene, when the parents come home and they see something's wrong, Drew Barrymore's dad yells to his wife and says, "Go to the Mackenzies," which is
a blatant Halloween reference.
Which is what Laurie Strode told the kids in Halloween.
Also, Billy's last name is Loomis.
Yeah, there's like so many Halloween references. It's amazing. So, are you guys okay with getting into rating this?
Yes.
Absolutely.
All right. So for any new listeners that are celebrating on our 2-year anniversary, our rating system is nay, okay, yay, or slay. Mike, why don't you start us off?
So this was a foundational text in my film horror watching career. And even though I just said rewatching it and like seeing elements of it that seemed dated, I still give it a slay, because I still think that you cannot remove this from the history of horror movies, especially over like the last 30 years. This is such a key piece of work. And not just in like film in general, like also in Wes Craven, who, you know, is a horror icon. It's a key work in his filmography as well. And I feel like it's too pivotal in every way that like you can't remove it. It's such a slay. It's so good. It was so influential. And if you erase this movie from existence, you're literally probably like demolishing 10 years of horror history. So I'm going to say slay all the way. Night and day.
All right, Xylia, what do you think?
So I'm really having trouble rating it. I would give it between a yay and a slay. I like really don't overly like franchise type horror movies. I don't know if anybody got that yet or not. But yeah,
like me.
I mean, I had not seen that movie before I picked it. I tend to really like not be super into the franchise movies, but I actually really like this movie. So, I'll give it a yay.
A conservative
It's a
yay.
high yay.
A high conservative yay.
No, a liberal yay.
A liberal yay.
Yeah.
So, like Mike said, this is super influential. You kind of can't have the horror of today without this existing. This kind of laid the blueprint for like modern horror, and it revived the genre that was dying, which not many movies can say they've done that. At the same time, personally, like I said, this isn't a movie I go back and watch very often. It's not really in my catalog of movies. Like I said, I just watch all the time because I absolutely have to see it all the time. So I also have difficulties with it. Like Xylia, I think I'm gonna give it a yay as well. I can't believe it's only getting 1 slay. I feel bad. But yeah, I think for me personally, it's just, I think it's great. It's done really well, but it's not a go-to slasher for me. So yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I have to do that to you. Now we're gonna do something a little new on our Instagram. Last week, I think, Xylia had posed a question. We wanted to know what you guys thought of Scream, and I think she had a couple answers.
I do. Okay, so my friend Crystal said, "It's a classic. Can't wait to see the new one." With a ghost emoji. Her partner has a ghost face tattoo he recently got. And Heather McKill says, "Love it. One of my go-to horror films. Couldn't tell you how many times I've watched it. Laughing, crying emoji face."
So I feel more on the Mike side than our side, maybe.
I mean,
Heather has taste.
I mean, I really liked it. I'm more on the high yay, where you're the hesitant yay.
Hesitant yay. You're gonna watch this many times over.
I'll probably watch it over.
Okay, there we go. So now I think it is time for the budget game. For you that are new, the budget game is when Xylia and Mike battle to the death to guess how much it costs and how much it made, and the winner gets my undying love.
Oh, okay.
So,
which varies from week to week.
Yeah.
Exactly. So this week, we're at a mediocre. How much do you think this movie cost, Xylia?
$12 million.
$12 million. How about yourself, Mike?
$21 million.
So Xylia's gonna take this one. The budget was 14 to 15 million for this film. How much do you think this film made? We'll start with you, Mike.
80 million.
80 million. Xylia.
93 million.
Okay, fuck you. Stop stealing my bag, bitch.
What?
So Xylia will take it, sweep
fuck
it.
You!
So, not that close. This movie made $173 million.
That's
oh my god, that's amazing.
This movie was a smash, kind of ingenious. So this was released 5 days before Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
And their idea was that horror movies don't usually get released on Christmas. And they said this way during the holidays, horror movie fans had something to go see in December.
That's a good idea.
I think it kind of really was a trendsetter that way, because now there's usually always a big horror movie release at Christmas time. Probably because everyone wants to have the financial success this had.
Maybe.
But obviously a huge smash. It spawned 3 sequels, a TV show, a new sequel coming, and a new TV show coming. So, just
Oh yeah, I
massive.
forgot I watched the first season of that Scream show.
So now I've got to get into the shameless promotion. First, if you want to hear some awesome music from the movies that we've reviewed and the horror movies we love, go on Spotify to the It Slays Podcast Horrific playlist, and we have songs from Scream now, songs from a whole bunch of stuff we love. Check it out, follow it, we're always adding new stuff. Make sure to follow us on all our social media at It Slays Podcast. If you want to support the podcast financially, help us upgrade gear, we use the money to get giveaway stuff, all this kind of cool stuff. You can go to patreon.com/itslayspodcast. There's all different kind of tiers. You can get shout outs, thank you cards, shirts, all different kinds of things. And we want to make sure, since it's our anniversary, that we're shouting out our 3 patrons we have right now that have been ride or die.
Yeah.
Colton, Jennifer, and Cecily, who all contributed since the beginning. And I know Cecily and Colton got to pick a movie that we reviewed, and they both managed to get on the podcast. They snuck by security. Also, if you are interested in purchasing an It Slays Podcast shirt or tote bag or face mask or anything, you can go to redbubble.com/itslayspodcast/shop, or you can just look up It Slays Podcast, and we are there. And lastly, if you are ever so kind, feel free to go to iTunes, give us a star and text review, and we will read it on the show, no matter if it's good or bad. I think we've proved that already. And lastly is to announce our next film, our last film of our 2-year anniversary. There's going to be lots of exciting announcements. We'll be announcing our giveaway that we've been running on social media all month. Maybe announcing some just things going on with the podcast, as well as we'll have a special guest. So the movie that you guys voted and picked is The Lighthouse. I think we're all excited to review this. Filmed in Nova Scotia, and featuring a friend of the podcast, and we just talked about when we talked about Patreon, Colton. He's going to be visiting. He did the Witch episode, so he had to come back for The Lighthouse.
Icon, film critic, screenwriter.
Icon. Legendary icon.
We love him.
And recently receiver of a card from Xylia.
Yes, Jennifer and Colton got cards. Thank you.
I hope they enjoyed them, They looked magnificent.
Thank you.
But I think that is everything. Thank you for tuning into, I guess, what is part 1 of 2 of the 2-year anniversary.
Oh yes, and I have to say, I would like to wish my humble host Rowan a happy wedding anniversary.
Yeah, we're recording this on our wedding anniversary.
What? Oh my god, you guys, I feel like garbage.
It is February 13th, and this is what we do. We work for you during our anniversary and eat $100 worth of sushi.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, if I don't remember my parents' anniversary, I'm never gonna remember yours.
That's okay.
That's okay.
But happy anniversary. I love you both. I'm glad you found each other. I'm glad you got married. I'm glad that we all met each other. It's wonderful.
Thanks.
And just in case any of the listeners wanted to know, no, I did not give Xylia a used copy of People Under the Stairs this anniversary.
No, he already did that.
Not
for my
again.
birthday.
He already did that once.
We all heard that story.
What is the X anniversary gift? Like, it's a second used copy of People Under the Stairs.
Yeah.
How many copies can we get her? So I think that is everything. As always, I am your humble host, Rowan.
Bye, it's Xylia.
Thanks, it's Mike.
See you later.
Bye.
We're going to expand our weekly video segment to take you into the back shelves of your local video store, back where it says horror videos and where kids are devouring some awful films that we call the video nasties.
Are you freebasing? Inquiring minds want to know.
I have to break free from this culture of mechanical reproductions and the thick incrustations dying on the surface.
Fuck the prime time, bitch! The pain, I can assure you, will be exquisite. As for our deaths, come with me and be immortal. We have such sights to show you.
We've got to return some videotapes.